All right, everybody, I want to welcome you to this presentation. And let me just say before I begin, my hope and prayer for this presentation is to give you a firm foundation to create a compelling reason why you want to do this course with me. It's 8 weeks long. That is not going to fix lifelong habits, emotional attachments to food or addictions to food or things like that, but it is a firm foundation on which we can build off of to create some habits of health that will last a lifetime. So my hope and prayer is by going through this presentation, I've been able to package it and present it in such a way to you that will give you that foundation, that compelling reason why you're doing this, and to follow through with those habits after we finish this 8 weeks. So, as most of you know, my name is Dr. Gary Broder. I'm a chiropractor. I practiced for 17 years up in Rhode Island. I'm also a certified health coach through the McDonald Center for Obesity Prevention of Villanova University. I've witnessed, over my years in practice, I witnessed a very significant rise in what are called non-communicable diseases. We'll call them and refer to them as NCDs. I witnessed that in both the pediatric, the kid population, and the adult population. So some of these most common NCDs that, you and I have family, friends, and people who have gone through these things. Some of us might be experiencing them ourselves, like cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, cholesterol, stroke, osteoarthritis, neurodevelopmental disorders are just exponentially growing year by year. And the evolution of this topic began as I started discussing the global impact of NCDs. Well, after researching and really digging into this and comparing that with what I witnessed in practice, it quickly evolved into the global impact of obesity, which we're going to term Globesity, as it's become epidemic around the globe, affecting diverse cultures and populations. Obesity is a causative or contributing factor to all NCDs listed above. If you've not been diagnosed with one of those already and you are overweight or obese, there is an extremely high likelihood that's what you're looking at in your future. So right now our species faces a predicament. Right? The predicament that our species faces is that the number of obese people in our society and around the globe is surpassing the number of hungry people and projected to get worse, with the population expecting to grow from 7 billion to 9 billion people by the year 2050. In this presentation, I will stress the importance of returning to a traditional diet of eating local, seasonal, and organic foods, preferably that is plant-based. So, off we go. We're going to begin with a little movie trailer here from a movie called Globesity. It's Fat's New Frontier.
The weight of the world is shifting in ways that will surprise and perhaps even shock you. Not so long ago, in many of the world's poorer countries, hunger was the headline health concern. Estimates put the number of malnourished at 700 million and obese, mainly in rich countries, at 100 million. How the tables have turned.
In truth, no country has managed the transition to get rid of hunger without it shifting to obesity very rapidly. Among low and middle income countries, there's not a single country that I'm involved with or know about or have studied, from sub-Saharan Africa to South Africa to the Middle East to Asia and Latin America, that has controlled this problem.
So much larger than life. I'm gonna wash it away.
By 2010, the number of malnourished people had grown only marginally, but the number of obese people had exploded to 500 million. It's predicted that by 2030, more than 1 billion will be obese.
So we have exported the burden of obesity into the emerging economies, just at a time when we're kind of leveled off. This is a worldwide problem, and every country in the world should be concerned about it.
How will the world cope with its dramatically expanding waistline and the serious, complex, often deadly health risks that can accompany obesity? Diabetes, cancer, heart disease.
All right, so there you have it. That sums things up pretty nicely for us, and it gives us a point that we look forward from here because, you know, as he mentioned, there's no country in this world that has successfully transitioned from hunger without going all the way to obesity. I'm going to show you the reasons why that's happening, and it's a result of much of what we're consuming today. Let's begin by stepping back, though, and let's look at first and gain an understanding what obesity is. And what we're going to go through here is body mass index. Now, there's several ways that we want to assess what the health and status of our body is like, but we can do this physically in a few different ways. So body mass index. There's a normal range, which is 19 through 24. Now, body mass index is very simply based on your height and your weight. It's not a perfect measure because it doesn't take into account, you know, an athletic build or something like that. But as a standard, as just a norm for everyday people, normal body mass index, or BMI, is 19 to 24. Someone who's considered overweight is 25 to 29 BMI. Obese is 30 to 40. Okay, extremely obese or morbidly obese is actually 35 or 40 and higher, depending upon which chart you look at. Now, this next picture, this is a standard BMI chart. You can pull this up on the web very simply and easily. There's also calculators on the web where you can plug in your height and weight and everything, and it will shoot back a number, your BMI number. In the body composition, the lean screen composition that we're going to do in this program with you, you will also get a measure of your body fat percentage, but also your BMI number. So over here on the left-hand side is your height. So how this would work, you would simply, let's say, if you were 5 feet 5 inches tall and you weighed in at 180 pounds, you would slide right across to here, 180, and you'd slide up. Your BMI at 5'5", 180 pounds would be 30. So you'd be considered obese. This is the direction we want to move in, green being that normal healthy range. Now, many times when people look at this, they're like, well, if I'm 5'5", I'm 180 right now, 144 pounds. Boy, I haven't been that light since I've been in high school, or I was never that light. Well, this is what, you know, statistics and research shows. This is actually the healthy range for us to be in. So this is our basic measure right here, BMI, body mass index. Next chart we're going to look at here, there's actually several. These pictures I'm going to show you come right from the CDC website, the Centers for Disease Control. Now, these stats are from 2011. They might have some current stats up there right now, but they go back as far as 1978. The importance of looking at these is the disturbing trend of what's happening in our country. So let's begin with 2011. Here's a map of the United States, and you have a key right here in the bottom right. And these numbers, these percentages, are percentages of population that range in that BMI. So 20 BMI or under, right? 20 to 25, 25 to 30, 30 to 35, and 35 and above. So when we start getting into this orange and dark, orange-red color, we're talking obese and morbidly obese. So back in 2011, we can see, some of the areas that were in, somewhat healthy ranges, and we can see, portions of the country that were becoming overweight and obese. Now, fast forward 1 year. Here's 2012. Now we have a couple more states that are showing up in the overweight category. Right? No one really showing up in the morbidly obese category yet, but let's go to 2013. Look what's happening. Trend continues to grow. Our nation is growing. The waistline is growing. Then we fast forward to 2014. We see that even more morbidly obese states. Okay, and we've got Arkansas and Mississippi down here, West Virginia here. And what's interesting is that the poorer the socioeconomics and demographics of areas are, we tend to see obesity at its highest, which is really kind of sad. There's not access to live foods, to produce, and it's really sad when someone can go to the grocery store and buy, they can go to the drive-in or drive-through and buy fast food that's cheaper than something they could get out of the produce section of the grocery store to feed their family. So that's partially what's driving this, and behind that is big business. I'm going to show you some infographics on that as we go through this. But now, from our country, let's take a look and apply this to the globe. So this is a problem of epidemic proportion. Here's our map, and what I want you to look at in this bottom left corner here, okay, BMI. So these are the BMI ranges. Now, you watch from the years, it's starting in 1976, and it will fast forward all the way through today. And you watch the colors on this globe become orange and red as we grow, our waistline grows, as we export obesity around the world. You know, there's been a big push for capitalism with globalization, westernization, and urbanization of third world countries. And as that's happened, we've exported our American diet, our Western diet, around the globe. And you look at the evidence here of what's going on. It's rather scary. Now, what's more scary to me is the effects of this. So let's look at some information. As I go through this presentation, there's going to be a lot of pieces of data that I'm going to share with you because I think it's really important that we understand the impact of this, not only on our health, but also financially. So since 1980, obesity has more than doubled worldwide, affecting diverse cultures and developing countries included. As of 2014, there are 1.9 billion people overweight, and of those, there are 600 million classified as obese. 41 million children age 5 or under are obese. Obesity significantly increased a person's risk for non-communicable disease, those NCDs I talked about on the very first slide. As of 2012, NCDs account for 63% of all deaths. That's 38 million per year globally, and these deaths, more than 80% are in the lower income countries. Now, over the years through history, you know, obesity was considered a disease of affluence, right? Those that had the most money that could buy the food were tended to be on the obese or overweight side. Not so anymore. So here we have Dr. Margaret Chan from the World Health Organization. And according to her, the worldwide increase of NCDs is a slow motion disaster, but the unhealthy lifestyles that fuel these diseases are spreading with a stunning speed and sweep. So we've had this transition away from our traditional diets. It's called the nutrition transition. As our Western diet of fast and processed foods has spread globally, we see NCDs on the rise in populations where they simply never existed before. We can see this as far back as the 1930s through the works of people like Dr. Weston A. Price, author of Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. I highly suggest that at some point, if you have not taken a look at that book, take a look at it. Here's a little glimpse into it right here. So, Dr. Price, through his journeys and his research, he produced this book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It was a result of his travels around the globe. After what he started witnessing with many of his patients, he was a dentist actually, and he started witnessing more and more dental caries, cavities, and degeneration in the teeth. And this prompted him to look at the diet and what was contributing to it. Well, eventually that led to him traveling the world and studying indigenous populations of tribal nations, hunter-gatherers that ate off the land locally, seasonally, and organically. And as you know, if you had children who have had braces, or they've many times are using these palate expanders, as we've had a diet richer in processed foods and sugars and things like that, it's changing our structure. And many times we see the mouths of children that the palates are very narrow. They're not a full palate any longer. So they put these palate expanders in there so the teeth can fill in. So take a look at this. Traveled around and he looked and studied these indigenous populations and photographed them, lived among them, and really collected a ton of data. One of the biggest things he started to observe was the perfection of their teeth, the arches and palates that they had, okay, and they were all in very good health. The other significant thing that he noticed was once these areas or tribes or portions of these third world countries that started to import Western foods and processed foods and sugars, he noticed in those tribes he saw significant deformities to the teeth, dental caries, cavities, and things of that nature, and deformities. And you can see on this last picture here some of those. So it's a fascinating study on nutrition and its impact on our physical body. The next person I'm going to share with you who did an amazing research and study was Dr. Francis Pottinger. You may have heard of this, Pottinger's Cats, to study nutrition, showing dietary influence on genetic expression in future generations. This is all about epigenetics, and epigenetics is a fascinating field. Epigenetics tells us that our diet, our lifestyle, will trigger genes to turn on and off in our body, and that will influence generations to come. So epigenetic influencers keep some of our healthy genes in the off position, while some of the unhealthy traits get turned to the on position. So this guy, Francis Pottinger, so in this study, he looked at 900 cats and through observations over time. I think there were 7 generations of cats, but he looked at cooked foods. Okay, when you cook your foods, it kills the enzymes. It also depleted nutrients. And he found that when these animals were eating cooked food, he found that the amino acid taurine was depleted during cooking, which didn't allow the cats to form protein structures, which proteins are the building blocks for everything in our life, every material in our body. It's all coming from protein structures, right? So this resulted in certain observed health effects. By the 3rd generation of cats, the cats only lived 6 months. They had very soft bones. They suffered from adverse personality changes. Males became docile while females became more aggressive. The cats suffered from most of the degenerative diseases encountered in humans, and more concerning is the cats totally died out by the 4th generation. So he had hoped to study 7 generations. He couldn't get beyond the 4th generation because of the foods they were eating. And so this ties back into that field of epigenetics, right? The influence of food on our genes, lifestyle, and environment on our genes and their expression over several generations. All right, more on the nutrition transition. According to National Geographic, The Evolution of Diet, this is a fascinating read. Studies suggest that indigenous groups get into trouble when they abandon their traditional diets and active lifestyles for Western living. Diabetes was virtually unknown, for instance, among the Maya of Central America until the 1950s. As they switched to a Western diet high in sugars, the rate of diabetes has skyrocketed. Now, if you look at this picture I have to the right side here, we see in 2013, just a couple years back, we have worldwide diagnosis of diabetes, 382 million. As our population grows, okay, it is predicted that by the year 2035, there's going to be an estimated 592 million people living with diabetes. That's an increase of 55%. Now, you know, when someone has diabetes, we're talking about type 2 diabetes. This is completely reversible through lifestyle and exercise. Now, when people have diabetes, now there's a whole host of other health issues that come with that. We have neuropathies, we have all kinds of physical issues, fatigue, we have infection, we have a whole host of other issues that come up with this. The sad part is that it is completely reversible, but people are not taught, or they're not willing to have a compelling reason to make changes in their life so they don't head down this pathway. The nutrition transition, the global market of fast foods, this is also mind-blowing, right? It's one of the most consumed variety of foods throughout the world. It's expected to reach $617.6 billion per year in 2019, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 4.4%. This market had a net worth of $477.1 billion in 2013. This is according to the Global Fast Food Market Industry Analysis. Now, here's what's happening. The busier and crazier that our lives get, if we are not shopping, planning, preparing, and getting ready for our week ahead of time with our meals and with our food, what are we left to resort to if we're out on the road coming back from a practice, a game, wherever? If we are not prepared, this is what's available to us, okay? So we've got to plan, and the only way that we're going to be successful with getting healthy is if we plan ahead and we meal prep. All right, nutrition transition continues. The global food market is controlled by a small number of companies who operate a system that delivers cheap food. This cheap food comes at a price in terms of health consequences, right? Those NCDs we talked about, diabetes, heart disease, other food-related illnesses, and to the environment in terms of pollution and the associated cleanup strategies. Now, have a look at this. These companies that globally produce and export these processed foods are controlled by just a handful here in the center. They control the entire global food market. So when they start pushing these processed foods that are very high in sugar, high in chemicals, high in excitotoxins and MSG and other things like that, and they're starting to get consumed at, like high fructose corn syrup, another one, and they're starting to get consumed at rapid rates. It changes our body's physiology, and our body, a protective mechanism that our body has is to store chemicals in fat cells. It's a protective mechanism. the more processed foods and sugars and preservatives and additives that are in there, guess what? More fat cells. The larger they get, the more they store. Okay, but what's mind-blowing with this is that this entire global food market is controlled by just a few companies here. Right? You do not see a live food on here. All right. More than half of the world's population now live in urban environments, right? We call that globalization, westernization, and urbanization. Many people are very much for that, and it's brought a lot of great technology to certain parts of the world, but with that comes that Western way of living, fast foods and processed foods. All right, so while 1 in 4 adults and 4 in 5 young people aged 11 to 17 fail to get sufficient physical activity. Okay, so we're living in urban areas, world's becoming more westernized, and we're exercising and moving our bodies less, right? When we were hunter-gatherers, we had to work every day to get our food. So we're expending less energy, but we're consuming more nutrient deficient, high-calorie food. So it's no wonder why we're getting fatter and unhealthier every single year. All right, problem of epidemic proportion. So overweight and obesity statistics forecasted out to the year 2025 show there will be 2.7 billion adults that will be classified as overweight. 46% of the population, that number, 46 to 55% of the population. You'll see different numbers thrown out there, but roughly that's what we're looking at. And 177 million adults, that's 17 to 20% of the population, classified as severely obese and in need of treatment. That is a significant strain on our healthcare system, our healthcare delivery system, and on our finances and on our economy. And if you look at just the effects of this on people's health, also the lost physical production, the human production that we lose, the ability to produce, the ability to work, is lost when we have these diseases that require constant treatment. Take a look at the picture here on the right. This is what's called a DEXA body scan. All right, so we're looking, this imaging allows us to look into the body and look at the tissues of the body. So these pictures that we're looking at are 2 women, and this shows us visceral, which means around the organs, and subcutaneous body fat. All right, so we have one woman here who is 5'6", this woman on the left, 5'6", she's 250 pounds. The woman on the right is 5'5" and 120 pounds. Now, you can see the skeletal structures that are white, right? You can see the skull, brain up here, humerus, you can see the femur, right? Both. The red tissue is the muscular tissue, and this white area that underlies the skin, that's called subcutaneous fat. Around the organs in here, around the heart, around the abdominal organs, okay? This is visceral fat. This is terrible. Look at around the heart, okay? So not only when we see somebody who looks obese on the outside, okay, what's happening on the inside? Organs are getting squished up. There's, fatty deposits around the organs. That is extremely unhealthy. Now, at the same time, we can have people who may look like this on the outside, but might look like this on the inside, okay, because of, what they're consuming. So this is a great visual for us. You may have seen pictures like this on some of the TV shows that we've had on, like Biggest Loser or various things like that. But this is called a DEXA scan. All right, some more background information here for us. So we've got a cartoon on the right, global threat waiting area. We've got obesity on one side. It is a growing epidemic. So some stats, Globesity, okay, globally obesity-related medical problems will cost governments more than $30 trillion over the next 20 years. The total output loss due to non-communicable diseases represents 75% of global GDP in 2010, or $63 trillion, and that is growing every single year. There's a strain on our healthcare delivery system, and there's a strain on our workforce, and there's a strain on our economy resulting from this. For these reasons, the world, check this out, it's mind-blowing. For these reasons, the World Economic Federation has ranked NCDs as a greater threat to global economic development than fiscal crises, infectious diseases, natural disasters, crime and corruption. Okay? Mind-blowing. NCDs, obesity, and those other diseases, a greater economic impact in a negative way than these other challenges. Let that settle in for a minute. All right, there are ethical considerations for these big businesses, all right? An ethical dilemma. So I showed you the picture of the few companies that control and drive the processed food market around the globe. Now, these processed food companies, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. So they face some ethical dilemmas. And one of them is that they put people versus profit. Well, there's an awareness in the need to make improvements to the production, quality, delivery, and along with a plethora of other evidence showing a growing trend in obesity, obesity-related deaths, and NCDs, the big food companies have a fiduciary, a financial responsibility to their shareholders to maximize profits. Unfortunately, making their products healthier comes with higher costs, which means a decrease in profit margin. So we are putting people, okay, before profits. I mean, we're putting profits before people. Not a good scenario. More ethical considerations, right? Right now, we're feeding 7 billion people, and it's expected to grow to projected 9 billion by 2050. What that means when you crunch the numbers, we must effectively be able to double our food production while being mindful of the human cost, healthcare demands, shareholder profits, environmental impact, and effect on biodiversity. Now, why double? The reason why the food production has to double is that we are requiring richer diets, meat, dairy, eggs. For every 100 calories of grain we feed animals, we get only about 40 new calories of milk, 22 calories of eggs, 12 of chicken, 10 of pork, 3 of beef. So finding more efficient ways to grow meat and shifting to less meat-intensive diets, even just switching from grain-fed beef to meats like chicken, pork, or pasture-raised beef could free up substantial amounts of food across the world. So this image that you're looking at here is of the Amazon rainforest. And you're seeing sections of this rainforest stripped and cleared. We refer to this area of the world the lungs of the earth, right? A lot of our oxygen comes from this. And we're seeing a stripping of the land here for all kinds of different reasons. So this little strip, this little strip right through here that has not been cleared, these are protected Brazil nut trees. Okay, so they've been left stranded, but look around, everything else has been cleared around there. So we're stripping that land away, affecting, without a doubt, our entire ecosystem. Okay, so we have a lot of considerations with this. So more ethical considerations. This guy here, Dr. Jonathan Foley, is the executive director of the California Academy of Sciences and a world-renowned scientist. And he, with National Geographic, came up with a 5-step plan to affect the agricultural footprint on our globe. So his work focuses on sustainability of our planet, ecosystems, and natural resources. He's got a 5-step plan that includes freezing the agriculture footprint so that we're not developing any more areas to farm. So we want to use the farms we have, so growing more efficiently on the farms that we have, using resources more efficiently, having a dietary shift away from the heavy meat-intensive diets, and reducing waste, which could effectively double the food supply while cutting the environmental impact. Right? This is a fascinating read, The Evolution of Diet. If you have an opportunity, check that one out. There's also an excellent publication, video slash, there's videos with it, but a lot of great reads with it. National Geographic put out, it's called Feeding 9 Billion People, and this 5-step plan is tied into that. It is a fascinating read. All right, so here's another video for you that kind of sums up this portion of what we're talking about, food by the numbers, feeding 9 billion people. that kind of sums up what we were just talking about, that 5-step plan and actually feeding 9 billion people. One of the things that has been compelling for me is, over the years, I really have had a passion for health and for wellness and really teaching people how to live the healthiest life possible. And it is my contention that it is our personal responsibility for that. And especially in the United States, it is our personal responsibility. And I always thought that it was just an excuse that someone was overweight, or they didn't have the drive or motivation or willpower or desire to make change. And what's happened over time as more information has become available, and you read and you research and you look at the influence of some of these processed foods on the brain and on the body to create a chemical dependency, literally a food addiction, where we're exporting these foods to these third world countries. It has on some level become a human rights issue. So I want you to take a look at this picture for a second. This is the picture of hunger. This is the picture that we've seen commercials on TV for, asking us to donate to. This is an extremely moving picture because we look at this child, emaciated, starving, not really getting the food and nutrients that they need. This picture really moves people, and it motivates them to contribute, to make changes, or your parents when you were younger to say, hey, there are people starving around the world. Be grateful for what you have and eat your food. Okay? This picture is from India. I want to contrast this with this picture. You have 3 siblings that are extremely obese. Look what's popping up in front of them here. Okay? Processed foods, sugar, high fructose corn syrup. These siblings, this one right here, is actually awaiting a kidney transplant. Okay? As we have exported obesity around the globe, the number of obese people are exceeding the number of starving people. It is as big as a threat as this one on the left. Now, how can we have such diversity, right? 2 opposite sides of a coin here. On the left, we've got a child starving and emaciated. On the right, unhealthy. So this one on the left is unhealthy. These on the right are unhealthy, but 2 opposite sides of the coin, and in the same country. They are also from India, these siblings. Okay, so 2 very different results here that potentially are human rights issues. And here's why I say that. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? Article 25 tells us that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being for himself and his family, including food, real food. Right? It provides a reference point for human rights legislation regarding hunger, and the same now should be applied to obesity. As we have had a capitalistic society that had, and I'm all for capitalism, but if we've had globalization and westernization, we've exported our diets to these third world countries and are feeding these children and adults these foods and watching their waistlines grow, getting extremely unhealthy, costing trillions of dollars, taxing the healthcare delivery system. Who is responsible for that? How can we make that change? How can we transition from hunger on the left to a healthy state without going to obesity? Well, it comes with going to healthy live foods, right? Not processed sugar-laden foods. So World Health Organization came up with an action plan, right, to achieve by the year 2020. So these are some of the things that they're looking to do. I'm not going to go through all of these with you right now, but they have a plan. Now, I contend that we don't need another awareness campaign. We need to start with our own choices, starting with ourselves and what we do and what we consume on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis in our own country. Choosing more of a plant-based diet. Yes, you can get plenty of protein there. I'm not saying not to eat meat. I love meat. But we can make better choices and get healthier as a result. So, again, arguments for obesity, against obesity as a human rights issue. I'm not going to go through these in detail with you right now, but obesity as a human rights issue on the opposite side of that coin, there is plenty of evidence there for it. Now, right now, I just want to position this global concern to you, but I want us to think locally about it. It's one of the things I always prided myself on in practice, is to think globally but act locally. This is a significant problem on a global basis, but we can only make change if we do that one choice at a time in our own lives. Similar to the pictures I showed you before of those children in India, I want you to just take this in. On one side, we have obesity. On the other, we have hunger. So we stand on a precipice. This precipice has globesity on one side, the overfed and undernourished, and hunger on the other side, underfed and undernourished. Two extremes of the human condition deserving as much attention in humanity as possible, and both begging for a solution. The evidence clearly shows the predicament of our species and one that has arguably become a human rights issue. How do we make a change? Well, let's start here with this.
This could be the first generation of children in the United States that lives less than its parents.
I got 2 pills I take for my diabetes, then I got 1 for cholesterol, high blood pressure, and then I take Byetta, which is an injectable.
I'm getting really shaky, and I'm sick and I'm fatigued, and that's when they diagnosed me with hypertension and diabetes.
Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure cost this country more than $120 billion each year.
People are saying, you're crazy. You're a cancer patient. You should be resting. Doctors told me this.
When I had the second heart attack, the doctor said I should prepare for death.
Heart disease is an absolutely toothless paper tiger that need never ever exist.
People who were raised in Japan, the Philippines, Korea, China, never had heart disease, prostate cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis.
This is the atlas of cancer mortality in China.
Virtually, the Western diet was non-existent. They had no animal products. They had no dairy, no meat.
We learned that we could turn on and turn off cancer growth just by adjusting the level of intake of that protein.
I knew at that point what caused most diseases.
Our national authorities are simply excluding this concept in order to protect the status quo.
With the Western diet, there are going to be 500,000 people in this country this year who will have to have the front half of their body divided, their heart exposed. Some people would call that extreme.
I know of nothing else in medicine that can come close to what a plant-based diet can do.
If you go through life thinking that what happens to you from a health perspective is based on your genes, you're a helpless victim.
I reversed the diabetes. The diabetes is not coming back.
I just can't understand what it's done to change my life.
Diet is so much more important than anybody ever thought.
To me, the answer is so simple, it's criminal. It's just people starting to take responsibility for their health and starting to eat more plant-based foods. It's that simple.
All right, trailer from Forks Over Knives. That's going to be one of your homework assignments in our 8-week course. So the road back. There's no process that does not require time. It took time to get your body, mind, and spirit where it is at this very moment in time, and it will take time to create lasting change. The good news, though, is that wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with, improvements can be made as long as you have the desire to change. Thinking about the changes you need to make can be overwhelming. The only way change can happen is making a decision to improve from wherever you are right now, at your own pace, and then recommitting to that decision every day. Change will happen one choice at a time. So let the journey begin. When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town. As an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realized the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly, I realized if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could have indeed changed the world. Let's not wait to the end of our life to look back and think about what could have or should have been, or the diseases that we're struggling with have those become our identity for the rest of our life. So are you ready? If you're ready to take a positive step to improving your health, join me on this journey back to health in this 8 weeks to wellness, nutrition, and fitness bootcamp. Visit drgaryberter.com to learn more, enroll now, or to contact me with any questions. My hope and prayer is that over these 8 weeks, these next 8 weeks, together, you will lay the foundation to improve your health and wellness for a lifetime. It's a starting point, a launching point for us. So I want to thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I'm looking forward to these next 8 weeks on this journey with you.